touches on how the White House is trying to help entrepreneurs. This is really kind of amusing. You have the White House, which is the center, kind of the face of the outer part of the modern state, where the president is and his advisors, and they're real concerned about entrepreneurship in Chattanooga, right? They are thinking about us just as President Clinton looked into the television screen and said he thinks about you every day. And of course, he was talking to millions of listeners and viewers of that speech, where he connected with them all personally, individually, and through the soul. Somehow his gaze reaching across the media, if you will, across the medium of the screen into the soul of his viewer, and connecting with them. So even we have this large national system in Washington with its concern for entrepreneurs in Chattanooga, right? and giving us the impression that, well, things are going to get better. The White House is involved in the stifling of commercial government against the marketplace, and there is hope. Things are going to look better, and that's an unintended effect of media accounts of such minor reforms, or quasi or even pseudo reforms that seem to address a problem. They at least recognize something of a problem, and then say, well, we understand this problem, and we're going to streamline the bureaucracy a little bit and make things easier for the entrepreneur. The story, though, has an underlying truth that Chloe reports upon August the 13th. I think that was yesterday. The headline is "State Ranks Poorly in Entrepreneurship for Low-Income Residents." And the deck is "Leaders Call for Need to Implement Best Practices in Occupational Licensing." And this is important because the whole realm of occupational licensing has stifled the American economy. When we say stifle the economy, you're making kind of a vague statement. It has stifled thousands of people, right? It has dried up their drive. It has taken their nerve from them. It has made them submissive and compliant. And really, the whole idea that you can't do something without getting a permit dries your bones. It makes your mouth dry, and it puts a fear in your stomach. If you ever had that feeling, it has something to do with your digestive acids come up into your mouth, and it gives you bad breath. So you can tell if someone has bad breath. Often it's because they're under tremendous stress and fear, and their whole digestive system kind of works to show that they are under a great stress. Well, the economy is the abstract term for thousands of people who are under stress and either not going into business, either turning away from it, fearing entrepreneurship, fearing the idea of risk. That is what entrepreneurship requires you to face. You face risk, and you face the loss of capital, the loss of time, even missed opportunity, right? You face missed wages, right? If you're going to start your own little business, you face the prospect of that regular paycheck stopping because you're turning away from your employment to something new and better, or so you think. Well, my name is David Tulis, and our show here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio covers the free market and local economy, brought to you by Superior Air, the orange vans that roll about, providing relief on hot summer days, and also by Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters, of which I'm the editor. The story by Chloe tells about Clint Bolick, and he's part of a think tank that's called the Goldwater Institute. And he points out, not he, but a study that he is in charge of points out at the Goldwater Institute, that the whole idea of occupational licensing adds an estimated $100 billion to consumers in expenses every year that they wouldn't otherwise face, and that there has been a 500% increase, or a five-fold increase of callings that are ostensibly requiring to be licensed. Why? For public safety and public benefit. Everything from barber to cosmetologist to electrical helper to farm labor contractor, fire alarm installers, glazier contractors, according to a list on the Goldwater Institute website, manicurist, landscape workers. We're talking here, of course, of different jurisdictions. Pipe layer contractor, sheet metal contractor, tank testers, tree trimmers, truck drivers. Many of these people have to have special licenses to do that, and a licensing requirement makes illegal the activity that is to be licensed, but then makes it possible if you have the license. So if you are a pipe layer contractor in some jurisdictions, it's a crime to do that, or a civil offense to do that, an offense against the people and the state itself, or the county corporation or city corporation. And so you have to make amends. You have to pay a debt, if you will, and ask for permission to do that. Well, these are all marketplace problems, and Chloe's story does a good job. I'd say her story in the past couple of days is probably the most important one that we can consider in the local media. Clint Bullock says the administration has the Obama administration has identified that state occupational licensing laws often go far beyond their intended purpose and hurt people with the fewest resources. From hairdressers and massage therapists to funeral attendants and florists, states have varying rules. He says, Bullock said licensing is often used to benefit people who are currently in business against competition from newcomers. That's why often established businesses will not object to licensing requirements in their fields because they don't have a free market perspective. What they have is instead, they have a pro-business perspective, and pro-business perspective means pro their business. And if we can keep out competition by licensing some aspect of our work, of course we're grandfathered in. We sort of have implicit permission since we're already here. We can defy our competitors. And people who are doing that are not thinking holistically, right? They're not thinking, well, I would say, as Christianity would require them to think. Christianity would say, well, you should always be glad when people are in business and serving the public, even if they're your competitors. In fact, you should try to help them. You should try to help them get ahead, and maybe there's some things you can do together down the way. The story in June at Nooga.com by Chloe brings up kind of an objection to this process that we are to believe is understood by the federal government, which of course cares about the little guy, right? And it was a story about a National League of Cities announcement of a program called Startup in a Day. And Chattanooga city government has dedicated several people, at least part-time, to work to streamline the interface, if you will, the interaction between entrepreneurs perhaps like you, my listener, and city government, insofar as there is a necessity for some kind of connection or relationship. Mayor Burke said at the time, "I want to see more new businesses formed in our city." He says, being an entrepreneur is a great way for anyone to improve their life and work toward a middle-class income. And he points out that, well, the White House at that time pointed out a couple months ago now that entrepreneurs and small business owners who want to expand or to start face considerable red tape, as it's called, from zoning laws that are Byzantine and acquiring permits. And Mayor Burke said, if you have a good idea and a distinguishing way to market yourself, we want the government to be the last thing that stops you. Now that comment by Mayor Burke is exactly on the mark. It is very much in the spirit of local economy and the free market. And so we would like to believe that this is a genuine interest, and that there's not any effort by the city government, by commercial government in the city or the county, to restrict anybody's effort to help somebody else in the marketplace, right? Because when you're in business, you are helping somebody, right? You're helping them to the best cheeseburger in town. You're helping that person to the absolute best hot dog, right, as Good Dogs does at the North Shore, or the absolute best funeral services that can be had. The city has several employees who are trying to figure out how to streamline this process for permitting. But the larger question, of course, is, though, as follows: should there be permits for anything? Why? How is it that a free people have to have a special license to be a shampooer, or to run a manicure shop, or any one of those ubiquitous nail salons? Why does the cosmetologist have to go to Nashville, to the state government in Nashville, and find permission there with proofs that good will be done, the public interest not damaged, and of course all taxes and fees and so on will be paid? Well, I think that it's a good point to consider if you're just passing through Chattanooga if you're just passing through Chattanooga on your way somewhere else and you think, I'm tired of where I'm living and I want to go somewhere else, think about coming to Chattanooga. Chattanooga is a great place to live. And I would say Tennessee, despite its many, many faults, there's some grievous, you might say grievous sins against the Constitution, constitutional liberty, constitutional government, even at the state level. There are many things to object to. Still, if you say comparatively, Tennessee has many benefits. Think about as you drive through our lovely highways, our federal highways here, and even some of our state highways. Think about where you would go, where you would move from the dismal place in which you live now. If you live in Colorado, let me suggest Chattanooga as a great place to live. Now, Colorado is a place where you should definitely consider abandoning. And if you are making that considering to leave your place behind, breaking your ties to that local economy and entering possibly local economy here, that you pursue and persist in that. And I think the story about Jack Phillips, the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop, is truly something that you should consider as a raison d'être, a reason for being. And a reason for not just being, but a reason for changing your venue, right? Changing your place of business. Here, there are many advantages. As you know, the story is about the Colorado Appeals Court ruled against Jack Phillips, who refused to create a beautiful wedding cake for a couple of sodomites who wanted to have his creative talent, his genius applied to their baking, to their cake for their erstwhile marriage. They found his objection to doing that offensive and dehumanizing, according to a story at LifeSite News. Also a story at the Wall Street Journal, and probably other media that you have seen today. His argument is that I will gladly sell a couple of poofters a cake, but I will not. I cannot be expected to communicate and exercise my creative gifts as in their service if I don't want to. I can sell them a cake, no problem there, but I'm not going to be creative and artistic and speak by way of cake in their behalf. In other words, this is a free speech issue, and I have no desire to do that, and you can't make me. Well, it's sure that Jack Phillips would be welcomed here in Chattanooga. Now, the whole idea of relocation is something that we need to consider seriously. Is Chattanooga a place that we want to move from, or is it a place to which we would want to move? Or should I say that incorrectly? Is it a place we would want to move to make my comparison parallel? Is it a place to which we would want to move? And I would like to think that my experience here thus far, as a journalist, I've been a journalist in Chattanooga for more than 25 years in the newspaper business, and in the past 3 years in the radio media business. I'd say that it's better than Colorado. There's not going to be that conscience pinching proclivity of the commercial state to do that against you here. But still, I think it's fair that there are places that are freer than Chattanooga. There are places freer than Hamilton County and Tennessee. And how is it that we can opt out? What is the nature of collapse? How does collapse occur? And I think it's worth considering that collapse is something that is scale invariant. In other words, it happens the same way whenever it happens, whether it's in a bureaucracy or in an empire. And as Rome was collapsing, and it was 70 years from its end, there was a statesman, Rutilius, who was cheerfully talking about how we can save Rome, we can restore what has been lost, and he talked about the spirit of Rome, and had, as the neocons do, a supreme assurance of our exceptionalism, as it's called. Well, are we going to believe these kind of blandishments? Are we going to believe these promises about the United States, right? About America? Well, the United States has destroyed America. That's one dynamic I think that is worth considering. And in the context, of course, is: are you staying in Chattanooga, or are you going to leave Chattanooga? Should you stay here? Should you abandon Hamilton County and go to a freer place? Well, I want to talk about that because it is a local economy issue. Now, we here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio are members of Trade Bank of Chattanooga, and it is the smarter way to barter and to improve your cash flow We trade among 400 local businesses in every field, and you can learn more about Trade Bank of Chattanooga by calling Jürgen Mutz, the German with the southern twang, at 877-2202. If you are going into business or are in business, or if you are a high net income or net worth person, make sure you get the numbers guy on your side. The numbers guy here in Chattanooga is Eric Pelton. Eric is an accountant, provides tax services and cash flow management advice of any kind that you need. Call Eric at 622-3156, 622-3156. His name is Eric Pelton. Eric Pelton, he is your numbers guy. Now, we believe here in local economy and the free market in Chattanooga and beyond. My name is David Tulis. David Tulis, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time. I've got some things I want you to hear. Hang on.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former U.S. Ambassador to Russia and Special Assistant to President Obama, Mr. Michael McFaul. He'll be here to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Putin's aspirations for Russia. Don't miss Ambassador Michael McFaul this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on WSDT AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingraham, David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. A first in more than 50 years, the American flag going up over the U.S. Embassy in Cuba today. Secretary of State John Kerry returning there for the event.
Kerry is getting criticism for not inviting members of pro-democracy groups to the ceremony, though the State Department says many civil society leaders are invited to a special reception with Kerry later in the day at the home of the embassy's charge d'affaires.
Fox Radio's Evan Brown in Cuba. There are reports that the Islamic State may have chemical weapons.
Fox News has learned some Kurdish Peshmerga fighters in northern Iraq had blisters that match the symptoms of other victims of mustard gas. The intelligence community is investigating the reports, which, if confirmed, would be the first known time ISIS has used chemical weapons since the group came to prominence last year.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. And prices charged by producers up 0.2% in July. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Make sure you put going to Delia's restaurant on your agenda today. I did yesterday. Had two great tacos, kind of an after lunch snack. The restaurant is in South Saudi Daisy near the Thrasher Pike Light. And the special today is the taco salad, number 19. You get $1 off. Mention that you heard about Delia's on the radio, and you'll get a free iced tea. Make sure you insist on it, okay? So that the waiter will tell Maria Hernandez about her investment in herself through the medium, right? Through the medium of radio. That's what we do. We're called the media because we are a medium, right? We're between two parties. That is to say, you and her, Maria, who runs Delia's, and so we try to filter a relationship through our airwaves, through our entire platform. We are a media platform. My name is David Tulis. I'm a writer and produce work of, I would say, of remarkable dissent, a work of remarkable dissent at the website for the man who matters. That's Nooganomics.com. We also broadcast on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Hot News Talk Radio, and if your TV or your phone is connected to the online world, you can watch my guest and me. You can tell me if my bow tie matches my shirt. It's a kind of a stretch today. It's kind of a sawed-off looking bow tie. I don't know. I think the arms are too short, so it looks very, very non-Florida and very business, kind of too business-like, a little curt maybe. And we are also on our website, which is hotnewstalkradio.com. All these media, of course, in the federally licensed airwave, the FCC airwaves, of which we have stewardship of a tiny part. There too, we are pulsing out at you across the free radio world, trying to make things better for you in the way you think about things and the way you see yourself in the larger, well, let's say the larger geopolitical context. Maybe it sounds like I want to start talking about the China meltdown of the renminbi, but I don't think I'm going to get to that today. So Delia's is a place to eat. Think local, love your neighbor, buy local. That's our slogan. If we have a slogan, we have a non-trademarked innovative word, and that is, of course, Nougacentrism. So if you're a Nougacentrist, just put it on a T-shirt somewhere, and people will know that. Well, maybe another person will say, "Oh, there's a listener of AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio," and we are glad that you're here. We think that near is better than far. That small is better than big. That simple is better than complex. Simple is better than complex, and personal. And here we are in the footnotes now. Personal is better than corporate, and physical is much better than abstract. We've got great programming. I'm the number 4, the number 4 host, if you will. Number 1 is the kid, Russell, with Digital Drive, making a terrific free market argument, touching on the tech sector, trying to be useful in the tech field. Most people with smartphones don't really know how they work, and are using perhaps 2% of capacity in getting phone calls and sending emails and so on. There's a lot more to your smartphone than that. And Russell is assigned to help you. The number 2 slot is probably held by Sean Hannity, maybe NASCAR. We're the exclusive provider of NASCAR. And number 3 is Tex, and I'm at 4. I'm being pushed out by the jovial and congenial Eric Judd, who has just the lightest hour on the radio just after my show. My name is David Tulis, and we are making note here for a minute of some of the headlines. There's a story, a couple of stories at Chattanooga.com. That's your local news provider, Chattanooga.com, suggesting again the absolute lack of proportionality that you get with national power, national government, and the good people whom surround the working space of Chuck Fleischman, your federal representative. A story about a Dayton man getting 27 years in the Yankee Hooskow for child pornography. His name is Jonathan Eugene Loper, and a federal judge in Knoxville, Judge Thomas Varlin, sentenced him to 27 years in prison and then 25 years after getting out of prison. And how is it that he used a computer to send a child pornography to someone in Canada? How can that be worth 25 years? How about 1 year? Would not 1 year, if you believe in prisons at all, which we don't, would that not, in that framework, be sufficient? Why 25 years? Lack of proportion elsewhere. There's another story that I'm looking at at Chattanooga.com. A man named Lyndall Green gets 100 months. Those brave Yankees, those brave federal people, Judge Curtis Collier in his emeritus status, stabbing out against the evils of the marketplace and individuals. 100 months in federal prison on gun charges, and a man who's had some run-ins with the law, and he's getting 100 months. Which, do the math, that's 7 or 8 years in prison because he had a weapon. How about 1 year? Would 1 year not be enough? Well, if you are outraged at my suggestion that 1 year is not enough, well, you are going to be in for a surprise, because there's a whole life, a whole world that will be coming at you today here with me, David Tulis, your host. I do thank you for giving me a minute of your time. There is a tremendous disproportionality with the national government, and particularly with the prison industrial complex, which a particular political party created in the 1990s, according to Mark Casson, who runs Metanoia Prison Industries. And that came from people in the Republican Party. We're going to get tough on crime. And so guess what the party did? It created a gigantic industry. CCA, which runs Silverdale, is one of the chief players, the Corrections Corporation of America, a for-profit business which has a great interest in penalties. It has a great interest in statutes that bring prison as a consequence of violating some rule or other written by a legislature. There's a story in the Washington Post by a very noted writer whose name you know. His name is Radley Balco, and it's about a police search in Texas of a woman who the officer thought there in Harris County. He thought he smelled marijuana in her car. So she's a black. These are males. Okay, her name is Charnesia Corley. And she ran a stop sign allegedly, and he handcuffed her, put her in his vehicle, searched her car for an hour, and didn't find any pot, according to her attorney, Sam Kamak, according to Radley Balco. He came back, and when a female deputy arrived, she told Corley to pull her pants down, but Corley protested because she was cuffed and had no underwear on. The deputy ordered Corley to bend over, pulled down her pants, and began to search her. Then, according to the lawyer, Corley stood up and protested, so the deputy threw her to the ground and restrained her while another female was called in to assist. When backup arrived, each deputy held one of Corley's legs apart to conduct the probe. So they went into her pudenda, her privates, and looked for marijuana. Even if they had found some, that would be beyond 4 ounces, which is that's a resale size in Texas. 1, 2, 3 ounces or under 4 is personal use and not a big deal. Even if it would have been a misdemeanor had they found any. And this was all done without consent, without warrant. The warrant, well, I guess they could say the probable cause was the odor in that car of marijuana, which perhaps could have been something that covered the inner part of that car from it being parked near a factory, maybe. Well, you've heard the story of the man in Mexico who was subjected to repeatable digital anal penetration, x-rays, enemas, and a colonoscopy without consent. And another man, when he heard this story of the first man in New Mexico, came forward. In both cases, the police obtained warrants that were approved by a judge and a local prosecutor, but no drugs were found, if that at all mattered. Well, there's a story also, speaking of penetration of a different kind. We have the penetration of the state's claims upon the people through their educational system. TV3 is telling us about a new gym in Cleveland, Tennessee, costing $11 million. $11 million of a vast capital expense, of which the people of that county, Bradley County, will be paying on the bonds for probably a couple of decades. It's an 80,000 square foot gym that will be opening later in February. Cleveland High students went back to class a week ago. Construction continues on this gym. Martin Ringstaff, the director of schools, says there's a lot of work left to do to open this place in 6 months, but we are excited. The story talks all about capacity. We'll be able to seat 2,700 people that can expand to 3,000 seats for special events like graduation. And yet the bonds are let on such properties because we think that public education is here to stay. We somehow haven't paid any notice to the marketplace, which in the area of homeschooling and Christian schooling, and also in the area of digital services, online videos, online lectures, online curricula, much of it for free, is pressing against the tax-funded school cartel model, which you don't believe in probably as much as you used to, you, my listener, but which all your friends still believe in. Your friends have not connected the world of the internet and the legacy world, if you will, of public schools. There's more on the event tomorrow in Chattanooga at the Roundhouse. There is a continuing flow of sentiment and expressions of gratitude among people in Chattanooga for the soldiers who died. They're all called heroes. Here, if you died for your country in the military, you are a hero, just having been killed. Though you may have been fleeing a faithful Muslim assassin sent to kill you by his deity, you are a hero. There's a story about a singer who's going to be coming to town. Maybe it's not been confirmed yet. His name is Harry Connick, and that's for an event that'll come a couple of months after the July 16 massacre that shot up 2 federal military installations here in Chattanooga. His name is Harry Connick Jr., and he's been asked to perform Eternal Father at the event called Chattanooga Unite, a tribute on the river that's set for September 16. Details have not been said, and they won't be really announced until Monday, Saturday, to not interfere with tomorrow's events at McKenzie Arena, formerly called the Roundhouse, by UTC. Joe Biden, the federal vice president, the man with the empty office with nothing to do except perhaps long for real work, he's going to be here. And Gerald McCormick, the state House Majority Leader, a Republican, says that he's trying to make it so that the children of these 5 slain Marines and sailors will get free public education at the university. We're hoping to set up a fund paid for by the state, or else just set up a program where the universities will agree not to charge tuition and fees to the children of those service people who gave their lives. That is TV 12's story, Bill Mitchell's story on TV 12. Now, he calls Mohammed Abdulaziz mistakenly. He calls him a domestic terrorist. Mohammed was not a terrorist, and it was not a terrorist attack. I think you need to get that straight, my listener. A terrorist attack would have been had Mohammed shot at the styling school nearby, shot up the restaurant near or next to the recruiting center, shot up Desktop Solutions, which is run by a family, Seventh-day Adventist family. The man named Roger. I've had him fix my Macintoshes many times. If he had shot those places up, those being innocent people, a terrorist attack destroys the lives of innocents, not those of the warring parties. The warring party, of course, is the American military, which has vastly exceeded its capacity in wars overseas, driven there by Republican office holders, and kept there by Democratic Party office holders, and so we have this we have a development tomorrow. That's Mackenzie Arena. Just check your news sources. I've got a call. Caller, you're on the air. Make it quick.
Hey, I'm going to disagree with you. He was a loyal Muslim, but he was a terrorist, not a domestic terrorist, an international terrorist. So, and if you look at the definition of terrorism, he did create.
Caller, you're breaking up on me. Say that again. I didn't hear you.
He created fear in the hearts of the civilian population of Chattanooga. And that's what terrorists do. Even if they attack a military installation. If the U.S. were to drop a bomb in a military installation overseas, and the citizens around there were terrorized, that's an act of terrorism.
Well, an act of terrorism is when innocent people are killed, or a market is blown up in Kabul, or the most recent attack by ISIS-connected fighters, if you will, or extremists, was against a Sunni part of I think Baghdad, and 70 people were killed and 150 or so badly injured by debris and flying shrapnel and the concussion. Well, terrorism is against civilians. An attack on a military installation of the enemy, of your enemy, that's not terrorism. Okay, so it seems to me that the Americans have they have their soldiers over there, Marines and soldiers and Air Corps people, drone fighters and others, and that the attack by Muhammad, the faithful martyr to his faith, to his religion, was not terrorist at all. It was a paramilitary attack by a non-state actor who took up the cause, and who, as Sheriff Hammond had told you the other day, you, my listener, the other day, he was inspired by his religion. He had other reasons, but the primary motivator for Muhammad Abdulaziz was his religious conviction. And since Mohammedanism, or commonly known as Islam, what Islam, it operates on the basis of payment for debts. There are all kinds of expiations you can make. You can satisfy God's claim for justice and for virtue and righteousness and you can buy forgiveness. You can effectively crowbar from his account into yours forgiveness by an act of jihad. And since he was troubled with his perceived sins, he was going to make good by attacking the enemy of his people. The enemy of his people, as he saw it, was the American military. Of course, the Americans we can't say that he was completely right in all that he did. The Americans have brought about themselves many of the things which they're fighting. ISIS is in many ways an American and Israeli creation, just as 9/11 is very much an American event, And to say one thing about that, not that I want to get off on it. Look at the video of the falling debris from the World Trade Centers. You can clearly tell this building was demolished. It was demolished by explosives. It was a very beautifully done job, and you can see the spumes coming out from floors just under the collapse line, where lower level high beams are destroyed by shearing explosives whose explosion is directed to shear metal beams at an angle, allowing those beams to slip and fall and prepare for the onrushing downward motion of the collapsing floors above, where there's a final demolition. You can see those videos. It's not a big deal. I mean, we've been aware of this Americanization of the 9/11 story for some time. It's not something new, and it is a conspiracy because the people who have been paid to run that operation are very well paid. They're so well paid that there's not likely to be any kind of leak. Maybe 50 years from now we'll find out something in the way of a leak. Well, I want to talk just a minute about the whole question of opting out. Should we opt out of Chattanooga? Should we opt out of Hamilton County, or should we come here? If you, my listener, are traveling on the highway, is Chattanooga a place to which you wish to come, or should you come, or should you think about not coming here and maybe opting for a freer place? If you live in Connecticut or California or Denver, where the high court says you have no you do not have any religious freedom. Your freedom of conscience as a Christian or a religious person of some other kind cannot be allowed to direct your commerce. You might want to find a freer place in which to live. So collapse is a scale invariant phenomenon, according to Charles Hugh Smith, who's a very noted writer. And I do want to recommend his website. It's called oftwominds.com. That's OFTWOMINDS, oftwominds.com. He says that voting with your feet is really what we should all be doing. If we are not free enough in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, we need to move on. We need to keep going. And what happens? He has a terrific analysis and a chart that describes the life cycle of a bureaucracy. So because collapse is scale invariant, you can look at the collapse of a bureaucracy and see the same thing in the American economy. You can see the same thing happening if you read Gibbon and some of the other histories occurring in Rome before it fell. My time is short, but he says that there are 9. Let me just get these out to you right quick. There are 9 dynamics of decay that lead to collapse. There's first complacency and intellectual laziness. There's a profound political disunity, followed by a rise of unproductive complexity. Are you seeing that? Those who are bearing the sacrifices quit or they opt out. There's a decay of effective leadership. There is, even in the bureaucracy, a rise of the bread and circuses, social welfare, and entertainment concept that distracts and placates a restive citizenry. There's then a decline of wealth-producing capacity. The status quo is living off of financial trickery. We see that in the financialization of the American economy. We talked about that, by the way, at Panera Posse. Every Friday morning, you, my listener, can meet with me. I would be glad to meet you, my listener, at the Panera Bread Store in Hickson. Panera Posse is a get-together of mostly homeschool dads in which we round up the bad guys and put the money back in the bank. And we were talking about that very thing today about the financial trickery. Almost a quarter of the American economy is non-productive gambling on will one paper money scheme rise as against another or not? Will the dollar go up against the Chinese renminbi or not? There's a gigantic industry producing nothing of value that is a kind of financial trickery. Well, Smith goes on to say that there's sclerosis, the status quo is controlled by vested interests, and then there is resource depletion and environmental damage. And these dynamics play all around the globe. There is, of course, excessive optimism. You can hear that excessive optimism in the Republican candidates who say that we can restore the American dream. Every single one of them says that, and every single one pretends, and it kind of assumes that it can be done by a single man holding an office. And yet opting out is something that we have to do. If you opt out of Chattanooga, what will you leave behind? Smith suggests that there's a dynamic of what's left. You will be leaving. You making a contribution. You making a financial contribution to local economy will no longer be here. We would certainly miss you. And what's left behind, he says, is a Darwinian selection process that leaves the worst behind, they're acting out of humanity's last productive traits. Guilt, these are the last traits that are operative as the bureaucracy collapses, as the empire collapses. Guilt, complicity, fear of change, and love of comfort. The resulting collapse clears away the accumulated deadwood and enables real reform. The coming economic disaster is going to be doing just that. It will be doing just that. You, my listener, are going to be worth half of what you are now. Of course, everything we're talking about is evaluated in paper dollars. This is a scrofulous currency, unworthy of an American, and yet we're stuck with it. We are stuck with it, and your assets denominated in that money are going to be worth half of what you are now. So what can we do now? That's my argument here at Nooganomics.com. Now, the gospel is where you're going to find your intellectual and spiritual resources. The gospel, the Christian gospel, is producing a remarkable effect. We can see it in the worst situation in the Chattanooga area, the worst situation. is in a prison in Walker County, just south of the border. There's something happening at this prison that will just stagger you. It will stagger you, and you need to hear about it. That's Walker County Prison. Why is there a 5% recidivism rate of the inmates who leave that place? 5%. Why were there only 2 fights in the past 3 years? 2 physical fights in that prison. Something's happening that will help local economy.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former U.S. ambassador to Russia and special assistant to President Obama, Mr. Michael McFaul. He'll be here to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Putin's aspirations for Russia. Don't miss Ambassador Michael McFaul this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on WSDT AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brandon Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Trade Bank. Call now to get access to nearly 400 local businesses. Trade Bank. Call 877-2202. 877-2202. Trade Bank. You want to increase your cash flow, your competitive edge, attract new customers, and build a loyal customer base. You need Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call right now. 877-2202. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want with our wide variety of Trade Bank partners. For almost 30 years, Trade Bank has been your voice for small business, a member of the American Bankers Association, and in good standing with you. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation, 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the southern states.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Frank Sedapani. Minutes from now, the stars and stripes of that grand old flag will be flying over Cuba for the first time in more than half a century. Secretary of State Kerry will raise the flag at the recently reopened U.S. Embassy. An American tourist in Havana says it's about time.
We don't need to be separated. The worlds were too global today. We need to come together.
I'm Stephen Portnoy, live in Washington. Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio says President Obama is rewarding a repressive Cuban government. And when the administration argues U.S. policy of the past half century hasn't worked?
My question is, why hasn't he made a similar argument to the Castro regime? For over 50 years, they have tried tyranny and communism, and it hasn't worked either.
Rubio says the president's naive to think increased U.S. trade and travel will give the Castros a change of heart. Frank?
Grocery shoppers could get a break on egg prices before long. Wholesale egg prices, which were surging because of the bird flu outbreak, tumbled 24% in July. A New England town is putting down the stick and offering drug addicts a carrot. CBS's Barry Bagnetto has that.
106 opioid and heroin addicts have just turned themselves in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where Police Chief Leonard Campanello has a no prosecution program that fast-tracks them into treatment.
A person with addiction is suffering a disease. We've tried for 50 years to arrest our way out of this problem. It's not working.
He rejects concerns that police are overstepping their authority and sidestepping criminal laws. The program also pays for overdose-reversing nasal Narcan for anyone needing it. Communities nationwide are watching with interest.
U.S. officials suspect that ISIS used chemical weapons against Kurdish fighters in northern Iraq. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti has that.
Senior Pentagon official tells CBS News that reports ISIS used mustard gas against the Kurds appear credible. It's not clear where ISIS may have obtained the gas, maybe from leftover Saddam Hussein stockpiles, or more likely from Syria.
A firefighter has been pulled alive from the ruins of the chemical warehouse that blew up in Tianjin, China. The confirmed death toll stands at 54. In Japan, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe expressed profound grief for all of those who died in World War II, but said future generations should not have to apologize. The war ended 70 years ago today with Japan's unconditional surrender. Manufacturing suffered a June swoon, but it rebounded in July. The Federal Reserve says output grew almost 1%, led by a big gain in automobile production. The economy may be growing, but food banks from coast to coast can't keep up with the demand for free groceries. Some have had to limit the amount that they give each family. In early trading on Wall Street, the averages are higher. The Dow Industrials are ahead 45 points. This is CBS News.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? There's a tremendous price war among the major term life companies. Rates have dropped dramatically in the past few years. For example, a man age 45 non-tobacco user, $1 million of coverage, $75 per month level rate for the next 10 years. Or a man age 50 non-tobacco can obtain $500,000 of coverage for a monthly premium of only $110 per month, guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. That's right, level rate guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. If you're a smoker, we have great rates available for you as well. At Term Busters, we specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. If you're looking for new or replacement term life insurance, call today for a quote at 1-800-569-5440. That's 1-800-569-5440. You're probably paying more than you should. Call Term Busters, 1-800-569-5440, or visit our website at termbusters.net. Remember, 1-800-569-5440. Rates and availability may vary by state. Sample rate quotes based on preferred non-tobacco underwriting. Exam required to qualify.
The Stork delivered a big bundle for an El Paso family. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new mouths to feed. CBS's Kelly Weiss has the story.
Susana Herron and her husband Marco Delgado have their hands full with the premature babies. 3 girls, 2 boys. 2 of the girls are actually identical twins. The names?
Vanessa, Jacqueline, Montserrat, Diego, and Samuel.
He says they had a hard time getting pregnant and used artificial insemination.
All the babies were assigned a letter as they were being born. So started with letter A, so baby A. I said hi, introduced myself to the babies.
And he says he can't wait to bring them home. Kelly Weiss, CBS News, Dallas.
Cats that were living in a home in Henryville, Pennsylvania didn't need any help reproducing. By the time animal control officers arrived on the scene, 122 cats and kittens were living in wretched conditions. Some had injuries. Officials say the homeowners had planned on opening a sanctuary but couldn't keep up with a population explosion. Frank Settapani, CBS News.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Not far from Chattanooga is Walker State Prison in Rock Spring, Georgia. And there, a remarkable thing is happening, and it is coming about because of the work of a great, great system of thought and life that is the basis of the marketplace. It is the basis of local economy, the foundation of real capitalism. We don't have real capitalism today. We have a kind of ersatz, deformed, malformed, broken, cancerous capitalism. But real capitalism has its basis in this system of life and thought, which has brought, in recent times, great reforms in this prison, Walker State Prison in Rock Spring, Georgia. And we're going to find out about what has happened there from Mark Casson, who founded and runs Metanoia Prison Ministries. What I'm referring to in the way of system of life and thought is Christianity, the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, which changes men from the inside and then brings fruit, not just in the lives of individuals, but in the lives of culture and society, and even in a dreadful place such as a prison, which is part of a gigantic complex, a prison industrial complex, which has been run for profit for the past 20 years or so, for the profit of corporations and shareholders. Even there, you find this work in progress. Mark, tell my listener what's happening at this prison in Rock Spring. What is happening? What is the fruit of this gospel promise of Christianity there?
Sure. Thank you, David. Rock Spring, the prison there, Walker State Prison, is an amazing place. About 3 years ago, Nathan Deal, the governor of Georgia, decided to turn Walker State Prison into a faith and character-based prison. There are currently 650 beds. 450 of them are where men in the prison system volunteer, Muslims, Christians, Jews. We have a Wiccan there. They must have a faith to go there, but they go to that prison, and there's a mandatory character building curriculum that is used that everybody takes. And then there are electives where community volunteers come in. So if you're a Muslim and you want to learn about parenting, Imam will come in and teach you about parenting from the Muslim perspective. If you want to learn Christian finances, they have Dave Ramsey, and they have Crown Financial, and other Christian people will come in and lead those. The chaplain there asked the president of my board of directors of Metanoia Prison Ministries if we could raise up and train 200 mentors to go in and mentor the men their life on life, one-on-one, sit down with them for an hour and 45 minutes every other week for the 2 years they're there, and then do it all over again. So we began training and raising and training a cadre of mentors. We currently have 106, I believe, is the last count, that are going from 35 different churches in our area right here. And they go in every other week, and they spend an hour and 45 minutes with one of their, with a mentee. Some of these relationships have been going on now for 3 years. But what it's had, the impact it's had on the prison is just incredible. Can you imagine, I can't imagine society, I can't imagine prison where the prisoners don't have locks on their lockers, where they trust the guy on the bunk next to him not to steal his few possessions that he might have. But that's the case at Walker. They have no locks on their lockers. The prisoners did that themselves. They gave the locks in a ceremonial effort. They gave them away about 1.5 years ago. You can imagine a place where the average prison has more than one physical altercation per day. They've had about 2 or 3 in the last 3 years, physical altercations. A place where the worst things that guys get written up for is that they have bubble gum, or that they have too many pads of paper and too many pens. You have to really look for things to write someone up for now, because the place is pretty squeaky clean. And these are lifers. There are lifers there. Half the population roughly are lifers serving sentences of as many as 30 years.
So the men, and I guess there's some women, are there some women there as well?
The only women are staff. There are no women.
Okay, so this is a prison for men. They're there for 2 years, 2.5 years, and then they're transferred back to their other cells elsewhere?
Correct. They'll either go, one of two things will happen. They'll either leave Walker to go home, or they will leave Walker to go back into the prison system at another prison.
Well, how do you know about these things? How did you get involved, Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries, in this this great endeavor?
If I think I know what you're asking me, I was serving in the Army when I was 21 years old, and I committed a crime in which I was facing life plus 14 years in the state of California, and I was facing the death penalty from the Army. And as a result of that crime, I was in the county jail of Monterey, not able to
Monterey, California.
Monterey, California. And a Gideon came and ministered, and I was converted. My conversion was very radical. It was very swift. I knew instantaneously that I was a changed man. In the twinkling of an eye or in a snap of a finger, I wasn't the same guy. And so over the course of a weekend, I read the New Testament with the Psalms and the Proverbs 6 times, cover to cover. And I knew I took 2 things away. The first thing was Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." So that was the first verse I memorized, but I also knew God didn't want me to lie. So on Monday morning, went to court and was jury selection day on my trial. We pleaded guilty to the charges.
And what were the charges?
The charges were attempted premeditated murder, false imprisonment, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with intent to do great bodily harm. The crime was basically I was hired to kill somebody. I was in the process of doing that when the police physically stopped me. And so we pled guilty, and in open court, the district attorney stood up after the guilty plea was rendered, and he amended the complaint, dropping 3 counts against me. Now, I've told that to thousands of people in the course of my life, and 2 people have come up to me.
You're 48 years old.
I'm 48 years old. And 2 people have come up to me and told me that justice was not served in my case. And my response is always the same. You're absolutely right. I was shown great mercy. In my mind, I should have been executed. I was not. 6 weeks later, I was in Corcoran Prison. I got a letter from the United States Army giving me a discharge under conditions other than honorable, but not dishonorable. So I wasn't executed, and I also don't have a dishonorable discharge. I spent the next 15 years in prison, getting to know God, serving God, and inside the prison context, doing prison ministry from behind the razor wire.
That was a state prison in California.
Correct.
Mark.
I was in 2 prisons. The most famous of the 2 was Corcoran State Prison, where currently Charles Manson and Sirhan are housed, and then I was also at Soledad Prison.
Then what happened?
Well, I spent that time growing in my knowledge of my faith and applying my faith in that environment. Courted my wife. We met through a mutual friend. I courted her while I was in prison for 3 years. And when I was released in 2004, and I want to put a number out there. In 2004, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California, fewer than 1% of life prisoners were being paroled. During the 90s, the late 90s, when Gray Davis came in and then Arnold Schwarzenegger. In fact, in Arnold Schwarzenegger's first 3 years as governor, 14,400 lifer hearings were conducted during his first 3 years. He let out a grand total of 121 lifers, of which I was one of them. So getting out of prison was a miracle in and of itself. My wife and I got married, and almost immediately I got involved in prison ministry, not because I was looking to do that, but because the parole department said, "We want to start a program. Would you go back into the prison system and start talking to other lifers and people about paroles? Would you go to Fresno State and talk to students? We want to put a new face on paroles. When a parolee screws up, it's news everywhere. When a parolee does well, owns a home, is a taxpayer, no one hears a word about it." So they wanted to do something different. So I've been involved in prison ministry for about 24 years now.
Now, how old is Metanoia Prison Ministries, Mark Casson?
Metanoia Prison Ministries, I wanted to correct something you said. I'm not the founder. It was founded by another ex-prisoner in 1996. He was a pastor who I did time with, actually, and he got out of seminary. After he got out of prison, he went to seminary, and he started the ministry with his wife as a home. So it's been around since 96, but in its current form, it's really been around. It was reborn in 2005 as instead of an aftercare ministry, as an in-prison ministry. So discipleship and mentoring while they're in prison.
Now you're employed by this ministry. You're married and you have 2 children, ages 6 and 3.
Correct.
And what is it? So I want to ask you a little bit about what a regular day is for you, Mark Casson, but say a little bit more about the whole idea of entering society again. What kind of shock is there for a man like you? There are men who've been in prison for 30 years who come out, they go to an IHOP restaurant to place an order. What is that like? And can my listener somehow connect with this person's experience?
Sure. The closest thing that any listener might have is if any of your listeners were ever in the military. In the military, they tell you when to get up. They tell you when you're going to exercise. They tell you when you're going to eat chow. There's a very controlling environment, especially in the basic training and your advanced training stages. Prison is very much a controlled environment, and especially when it comes to choices. The most number of choices you might get to make while you're incarcerated would be between 3 different types of soap in the canteen there that you're going to purchase. There might be Dial, there might be Ivory, and there might be Irish Spring, and that's it. Then you come out here the day you get out of prison and you need to buy some cosmetics. Well, in some cases, the shampoos that we used in California prisons were not name brand shampoos. They didn't carry the brand at Target when I went there. So I had to choose from 150 shampoos. I didn't know if my hair was oily or dry or anything else. So just making choices becomes crippling at times. You don't get to choose from a menu of what you're going to eat. The prison determines every meal for you. So imagine 30 years, someone else telling you what to eat, and then an hour after you're released, after 30 years, you're going to go look at a menu. It's quite overwhelming.
Is there something wrong with the term criminal, Mark Casson?
I don't like the term criminal. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think we misuse it, like a lot of other words that we misuse. And the reason I say that is the definition of the word criminal, if anyone looks at Webster's, criminal is anyone who commits a crime. So if any of your listeners right now are speeding down the highway, doing 1 mile more than the speed limit, you're a criminal. You're breaking the law. What we like to do is we like to separate the society into felonious criminals and everyone else. So the felonious ones, we talk about criminal activity, criminals. The fact is, my mom broke a whole lot of laws before and was never called a criminal. And so in my mind, if I'm going to use the term, I'm going to use the term for everybody. To me, it's a synonymous term with sinner, if I want to use Christian language. But yeah, I don't like the term because it's been used by politicians and others to create a class of people. You're a criminal. Well, we're all criminals.
And so the idea that people who are in prison are a class separate from that of my listener is sort of false. Does it give my listener somehow a false sense of his own security, his own virtue, perhaps, that maybe he shouldn't have or shouldn't feel?
Yes, I think it does. It puts one more, the media and the powers that be, it puts one more layer between people that they can use it and say, I'm not like you, I'm better than you this way. It's almost the same way we know that the guy who owns a BMW is better than the guy who drives a Volkswagen, and the guy who owns the Mercedes better than the guy that owns the BMW, and the guy that drives the Porsche or the Ferrari, well, he's better than all of those guys in our house size. Well, also the fact that you're a criminal, you're below me. I'm not a criminal. At least I'm not like you. It's almost pharisaical is the biblical idea. At least I'm not a sinner like that guy. I pray 3 times a day and I fast and I do these other things.
Well, how do prisoners in Walker State Prison in Rock Spring learn about Christianity? What is it that they're taught? What are the ideals that Christianity gives them? How does Christianity transform these often hard-bitten, very hurt individuals?
The gospel for the prisoner is very real. You don't have to convince a prisoner he's a sinner. He's reminded by it every day when the guard clings a key in a door and unlocks his dormitory. There's a reminder every moment of every day. The razor wire, the walls, they're reminders that you're a sinner. So the need is already evident for the gospel, for redemption. But and so once a sinner realizes his need and he is converted, then now, just like any other person out here, he wants to make his community better. His community, think of prisons as a little tiny walled-in city, because that's what they are. They have a store, they have a medical department, they have an education department, they have a police force, they have everything there. And so now the prisoners want to go ahead and make things better. Keep in mind that not all the people at Walker State are Christian. So the fact that they don't have lockers on their door when some of those men are Muslims and some of them are Wiccan and some of them are Jewish and some of them are other faiths, the gospel's still having its effect in that community so much that there's a trust, an overwhelming trust that goes on.
Well, why does Christianity bring this kind of amity among these very diverse and sometimes violent men with violent past? How does that work?
It works because once the gospel gets into your heart and you are converted, you go from hating your neighbor to loving your neighbor, from wanting to steal from your neighbor to wanting to give to your neighbor, to help your neighbor. True charity, if you will, comes from a heart that's converted through Christ to love. And true charity permeates into society. It permeates economics, it permeates education, it permeates health, it permeates neighborly relationships and all of those things. And so, yes, people would be shocked to know that stone cold killers who've been converted to Christ are neighbors. They love to teach Bible studies and worship. We have some great. We're gonna on August 28th. There's going to be all the volunteers who volunteer at Walker State, and there are a bunch of them, hundreds, a couple of hundred people who are cleared to go in there. They're going to have a concert at Walker State that the prisoners are going to put on for us. And in fact, I just heard the other night that their choir is actually going to make a record. They're going to record a record because they're that good. Imagine that, a group of men in prison that are potentially a world-class choir.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Mark Casson, who is the overseer of Metanoia Prison Ministries. He's 48 years old, married, father of 2 children, and is serving the idea of reformation, if you will, within the insulated, isolated communities or worlds that are prisons. And I'm asking Mark about how does Christianity work to make the world of the prison less hateful, less demanding, less demeaning, maybe less violent. So you're suggesting, Mark, that Christianity brings a kind of amity among people, trust among prisoners. Now, what happens when the prisoner who's been converted, let's say that he's serving the very last 2 years of his term, and he applied to Walker State Prison, and he got in, and he's going to serve the last 2.5 years of his term there. What happens when he gets out? What is the effect of the gospel promise on his life the moment he walks past that gate and into the waiting car of his dad, let's say?
Sure. One of the things that Metanoia has done, and I've done personally, is to try to write a little booklet that we give to our mentors to open the conversation with the prisoner a year or more before he gets out, to say, hey, let's map out a parole plan. Let's not make it a guess. Let's not step out without any sort of plan. So we help them plan. And one of those things, the most important thing for the prisoner who's a Christian, is to find his faith community, find a church, and get plugged in with that church at least a year before he gets out. Write them, communicate with them. The church can be praying for them, so that when he walks out, the most important thing for him to do is seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, knowing that all the other things would be added to him. I could tell you case study after case study of guys who were Christians in prison who walked out and felt that my number one need's a job, my second number one need's a place to live, my third number one need is a girlfriend so I can marry her, and maybe the church is 4th or 5th, and they struggle and they falter and they fail. And I know guys who've walked out with nothing, and they go right to the church, and God sustains them, sometimes without a job for a year, and somehow they get miraculously a place to live and clothing and food, and then they find a job. The interesting thing is, and economically speaking, the scripture says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. It doesn't say if a man doesn't earn a paycheck, he shouldn't eat. So the church should be looking to put prisoners to work when they get out, whether it's doing volunteer work somewhere, Habitat for Humanity, all kinds of work they could do while they're looking for gainful employment, and then the church should be able to help them if they're working and doing things.
So it's that spirit of willingness to help others by working on the behalf of some other person. That's the thing that matters in Christianity. The man who comes, he's been released from prison. He's sitting now maybe on the back pew of your church on the Lord's Day during worship service, and he's part of your community. Therefore, I guess you're saying, Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries, that the church is a real community. The word community is widely abused, but I think it's often it means just networks. But here in a church, you can have, and he has a good chance of having, a real community that will support him while he's waiting for remuneration, let's say for him to pay the rent or a cell phone.
Correct. And the church, one of the things that has to change in the culture of the church is that we have to stop looking at prisoners and ex-prisoners as second-class citizens. We have to stop looking at them as those people and start looking at them as brothers and sisters in Christ, just as we would any other brother or sister in Christ. And when we start doing that, the church right now in many places is fragmented. It's what I call fragmented Christianity. I go to church. I go to Sunday school. I hang out with some Christians on occasion, but then I go home and it's all about me and my family and my life and everything else. And so the community aspect can be lost.
Well, this is David Tulis. We're talking with Mark Casson, who runs a prison ministry that has a national implication, national value, and certainly a value for us as we are considering local economy. And we're going to find out. Next. I have some things I want you to hear about first, though, and that is where are the breaks within Christianity. Now, you, my listener, are not a believer, and so you may think these are not really important, but there are some serious gaps in the thinking of Christianity where whole parts of the world of Christendom have let something fall, and they have delegated very important work of reformation, if you will, to organizations. Is Chuck Colson doing the right thing, saying the right thing? Is there something we can see in his great work of the prison fellowship that did something for a group of people who should have been doing that work themselves? This is David Tulis. We're talking with Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries. Mark, what's your number right quick?
559-681-7858. That's 559-681-7858.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former U.S. ambassador to Russia and special assistant to President Obama, Mr. Michael McFaul. He'll be here to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Putin's aspirations for Russia. Don't miss Ambassador Michael McFaul this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on WSDT AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network. Coverage continues Sunday here at Live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the southern state. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingraham, David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lilia Wu. John Kerry becomes the first U.S. Secretary of State on Cuban soil in 70 years. He's presiding over a ceremony later today.
The American flag will fly at the newly reopened U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba. While in Havana, Kerry will take a brief tour of the city and meet with several public officials. But he's not slated to meet current President Raul Castro or his brother, former President Fidel Castro, who claims his country is owed millions in damages from the U.S.
Fox's Jackie Ibanez. Greek lawmakers cast votes on a deal to increase taxes and cut spending in exchange for $93 billion in loans.
After debating through the night, officials this morning confirming lawmakers had overwhelmingly accepted the proposal, although it still needs approval from a number of other European parliaments.
Fox Radio Simon Owen. And industrial output advancing at its strongest pace in 8 months in July. Fox News report.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
This is David Tulis, the editor of Nooganomics.com. There's a very important essay that you need to consider at my website, the site of which I'm editor, and it's about how you, my listener, and 9 other men can gather and effectively indict Governor Bill Haslam for rejecting his constitutional duty to uphold marriage and enforce our Tennessee Constitution as against any claim against it, namely that claim brought about purportedly by Obergefell, the federal pro-Poofter decision in Obergefell. 9 men plus you can have him tried here in Hamilton County. That is a provision in the Tennessee law for the removal of officers. You can have him charged and tried by, well, maybe you can pick Pam Fleener or Jeff Atherton can be the ones trying the governor brought here on account of this very powerful statute, which builds into the law the right of revolution, or should I say, rather, the right of counter-revolution, because Christianity is never about revolution. It's always about restoration, rebuilding, and counter-revolution as needed. My name is David Tulis, and the website is a it's not very popular website. It's very, you could say it's even unpopular, but it's unpopular because it applies only for and is usable only to the man who matters. And I do thank you, my listener, for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. The name is David Tulis. If you need to start your own business, make sure you contact Bruce Krebs at Entrepreneur Source. He will get you into a franchise. You don't owe him a dime after all of his hours of consulting with you and giving you battery tests, talent tests, and so on. You don't pay him a dime, but you end up with a franchise fitting your budget, your interest, your time availability, your capital availability. Bruce Krebs, 875-5621. We're brought to you by Superior Air, also Jets Pizza. And, of course, make sure that you enjoy, as I do, Delia's Authentic Mexican Fare at Delia's Restaurant, our beloved restaurant in South Saudi Daisy, right near the Thrasher Light on Dayton Pike. The name is David Tulis, and we're trying to see a remarkable development and its application for you, my listener. The development is behind concrete walls, concertina wire, and, well, the concertina wire may be coming down soon at Walker State Prison in Rock Spring, Georgia, on account of Governor Nathan Deals having converted that place of chastisement and repentance, if you will, that place of punishment and bleakness, into a prison which has a faith-based agenda and program. And Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries, what has happened in a nutshell at that ministry since that program brought, you might say, religion behind bars?
Yes, David, it's been an exciting transition to see. The prison has changed in many ways, and in fact, it's being studied by universities like the University of Cincinnati to see exactly how it's impact. Is there an impact in this? It doesn't cost any more. Any more money. The budget that they have at Walker State is not any larger than it was before it was Faith and Character, but the results that they're seeing are incredible. A much lower, fewer than 5% recidivism rate. The men who transfer from Walker and go to other places, the number of incident reports that they have is much fewer. Walker leads the state of Georgia, which is the 4th largest prison system in the country. They lead the state of Georgia in their in every category when it comes to the good things. Fewest number of assaults, fewest number of weapons, fewest number of serious contraband, number of recidivism rate, all those things, they're at the top. So that's a huge, when you start to think about economically, if fewer men are coming back to prison and it costs $30,000 a year to house one prisoner, every time you drop that by a point, you're making great gains in saving the state money.
So we have the gospel brought to the men in this prison, and of course there are other religious faith systems which are allowed in, the Muslim faith and the Judaic, Hebraic faith as well, and Christianity is perhaps chief among them, largely represented here in the South. Well, why does this matter, and what does this have to do with my listener? How is my listener affected by the ideas and the ideals that these prisoners are taught in Christianity? How is it that Christianity is supposed to be a salting influence in culture and in, let's say, in local economy here in the Chattanooga area? What does this program bring of potential benefit to my listener and his neighbors?
The potential benefit is simply change lives. When men or women are converted to Christ, and they are allowed to maintain strong family relationships, and they're discipled or mentored while they're incarcerated, the rate of recidivism drops significantly. Basically, I would argue that all men are created in the image of God, that we have a dignity that comes from being image bearers of God. One of the dignified things we do is work. And so the idea that prisoners are lazy and stupid is number one, a false idea. But number two, one of the reasons prisoners struggle is because their dignity is crushed. In a sense, they are treated oftentimes as lesser than human. We have ostracized them. We have labeled them as the criminals, the people who aren't like me. And so when they get out of prison, if they aren't changed in their heart, they will struggle to find employment. They will struggle to find their way because society is bearing down on them. But if a person's changed and their heart changes, they're going to do everything they can to find employment, but they're going to need assistance from the church.
The idea of jurisprudence in scriptures and Christianity is really quite different than what we have today. Christianity has the view of not of punitive imprisonment at all. So how is it? Talk a little bit about the idea of restitution and capital punishment as the two main modes of reform within Christianity, which many of these prisoners are adopting as their life way.
Sure. I'll give you a brief overview of the scriptural idea. In God's economy, when he was setting up a government, he didn't have the idea of imprisonment at all in his economy. What he had was a system that was called restorative justice, i.e. the idea being to restore the relationship that's broken. If I steal your car, our relationship as citizens and neighbors has been broken by that theft. And until that's been restored, our relationship's never going to be the same. And so God wants there to be a right relationship in the government that he sets up. And so when a person was a murderer or a rapist or a child molester or one of those, a kidnapper, those crimes, they were executed, and the execution was done swiftly, and the executors were those who were the witnesses against that person. So there was an involvement in the carrying out of a sentence by those very people who witnessed against it.
The execution is public, not private.
It was public and not private. It was not done in a sterilized room. It was done out in public, and the first stones were thrown by the first two witnesses that said this guy did this crime. Well, then on the restorative side, if I stole your car, not only would I pay back the worth of your car, but I'd actually pay back a little more to suffer some loss in my own life. And if I couldn't afford to do it, I would be enslaved to you. I would not be put into a prison system that's going to cost you money. In other words, the victims in society are continually victimized because their tax dollars, their income, hard-earned money is paying to keep someone in prison. when they don't need to be there. They actually should get, because if your cars get stolen or something that's not covered by insurance, you're out the cost of that. Plus you have to buy a new one, and your tax dollars are going to pay to keep the thief in prison, rather than you getting every penny back, a little bit extra. And that person gets to keep working for his own family, keep supporting his own family. So there's a huge difference between those systems. Now, I do want to say this. If there was anything in the Old Testament economy that was anything like prison, it was called the city of refuge. And what that was that if I accidentally killed you, you and I struggled here in the booth, and you fell and hit your head and you died, I'd be called a manslayer. And your family would have the right to kill me. And so what I would do is I'd go to the city of refuge and tell the people there, hey, I didn't kill him intentionally. It wasn't a murder. It was an accident. They'd listen to the case and they say, okay, you come in here for 7 years, bring your family, and you stay here. But the beautiful thing is, who was at the city of refuge? The priests, the Levites. So basically God was sending the manslayer not to prison, but to church, to the community where the priests were. And so in God's mind of working with people who sin grievously, there's always a restorative act, not only to restore them to the citizenry, but to restore the relationship with God as well.
And as against this theory, Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries, we have the humanistic version of redemption, which is there is no redemption, it's just punitive. And it has created since the 1990s a gigantic prison industrial complex. Talk a little bit about that. What are the prospects of reform of that?
If you can remember back to the 1988 presidential election, it was George Bush against the Republican against Michael Dukakis, the Democrat. Dukakis in the summer of '88 was far ahead of George Bush. He was double digits in front of Bush. And then around September, I think it was, a man named Willie Horton raped and killed a woman in Massachusetts, which was where Dukakis was from. And in so doing, his face was plastered on every TV screen across the world. And suddenly George Bush won. And what the Republican Party saw was, if you want to get elected, you just need to be tough on crime. And so throughout the 90s, we had the largest expansion of the prison industrial complex in the history of the world. The United States by 2010, and I will say this, in 1990, the prison population was nationally was about 600,000 people. In 2010, it was 1.6 million people. We almost tripled in size in 20 years. In 2010, when you consider jails and prisons together, we had 2.4 million people incarcerated in our country. That is 1% of our adult population in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And what happened throughout the 90s was private correctional companies, such as the Correctional Corporation of America or Wackenhut, they saw the opportunity to make billions of dollars off of incarceration, and so they started opening private prisons. They don't have to pay their guards and staff the exorbitant wages like the state of California does, because the state of California is a unionized state, and so those union guards, a guard in California out of high school can make $65,000 a year to start, and most of those guys, here's what they do in California. You and I are both friends. We both are guards. We're both only going to work 4 days. On the fifth day or the fourth day, I'm going to work a double shift, so I'm going to get overtime, and you're going to work for me. We're going to do a swap, as they call it, and it happens every day, and guards make 100, 120. Every year in the newspapers in California, they publish the top 100 wage earners of prison guards, and some of them are over $200,000 a year as just officers. And so here in Chattanooga locally, we have Silverdale Prison, which is run by the Correctional Corporation of America. And I would ask the question.
Well, that's just a jail.
It is a jail. It's technically a prison that the jail hires out. It was a prison at one time, but it's used by Hamilton County as overflow. People are there both waiting to be tried for their cases, but also serving out sentences of a year or less for the county. But I would argue, or ask the question, is it morally right for corporations to profit off of incarceration at the expense of the taxpayers? Because what that does is create a lobby that lobbies for longer prison sentences and tougher on crime and those types of things at the cost of billions of dollars to the taxpayer. One state, the number 2 state in the country in incarceration, is California, and currently they have at their heyday they were at 166,000. Now they're at about 145,000. They spend more than $8 billion a year in incarceration.
Now, you, Mark Casson, were in prison for 15 years. You were just about to go on to trial for for a premeditated attempted murder. You were 21 years old at the time. You served 15 and a half years in prison. You got out in 2004. You married a young woman who, with whom you had a courtship while you were in prison, one that lasted 3 years, I guess largely by correspondence.
She visited me regularly. We fell in love through correspondence. I actually fell in love with my wife before I ever saw a picture of her. But yeah, she started visiting me, and we visited regularly for those 3 years.
Correspondence is the most wonderful thing for a courtship. I do want to say met my wife Jeanette, and we had correspondence that went for quite some time. And it's a rich experience to write and to put your thoughts down.
It is. I actually believe letter writing is a lost art in these days of truncated communications.
Well, we have this prison industrial complex. Even here, we have police departments, we have police unions, police security organizations that are all lobbies for tougher sentences and to keep, you might say, to harvest the population for prisoners, to keep the profits coming in and the cells full. Now that creates terrible damage upon blacks, poor people, lower income people, those whom we could call disadvantaged, and their curriculum vitae, their resumes are blighted by prison terms, or even if very short ones, or sometimes just accusations. Mark, Casson, what about the whole Ban the Box program that's been noised about in the past 6 months?
Great question. Ban the Box, for those who don't know, is a movement to any job application you fill out right now will ask one of two questions. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Or have you been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years, including marijuana or other drug possession? That's every job application. Now, statistics and research, actual people doing this, have shown that a vast majority of those applications in which you mark the box yes never go to interview. They never go to the next step, meaning they get tossed in the trash. Whereas those same people doing
the digital trash, perhaps
the digital trash, or in cases where you walk into a place and say, "May I fill out an application?" It goes into the circular bin. The Ban the Box movement is a movement started by many Republicans, by the way, surprisingly to me. Nathan Deal is the most recent governor to sign legislation banning the box in Georgia. But it's an attempt to tell businesses, look, you can ask the question in the interview, but you can't use it as an automatic no on the application. And so they're banning that question from applications, except by people like hospitals, police, schools, places where obviously now, oddly enough, there's nothing that should prevent a man who is convicted of embezzlement from being a teacher in a school, right? But there is. We won't hire you if you can't pass a background check. Have you heard that? You can't even volunteer for a lot of ministries if you can't pass a background check. What does the background check say about a man or a woman's ability to serve in some capacity other than they committed a crime for which they have actually paid their sentence? That's the disconnect. Our society right now in America is an absolutely unforgiving society. We have said to the American people, you will never be like me again. And that's demonstrated in Tennessee, and it's demonstrated nationally in the fact that no convicted felon, no matter what the felony, can own a firearm. The second way it's demonstrated here in the state of Tennessee, which wasn't happening to me in California, is I own a home here in Tennessee and I pay my taxes, but I cannot vote. I believe that our country, one of the cries of the Reformation, of the Revolutionary War, was taxation without representation. So I cannot vote for those very people who tax me, and that was something that was big enough to start a revolution in our country.
Well, what are the prospects of reform, not now in this question within the prison system, but within Christianity? Christianity has let down the people who are accused of crimes. It has let down their care and their service now that they're in prison. What is the fault in Christianity that let the prison industrial complex emerge? And I would say that Christianity has to be held responsible because it is the most important, potent force for life and thought the world has ever seen. And so therefore, if there are problems in society, we have to look to those who profess Christianity and see, did they hold to what they're taught supposedly in the scriptures? What is the problem in Christianity that happened? Please analyze that for me, Mark.
Absolutely. Whenever the church stops doing what the church is supposed to do or has a mandate to do, a void or a vacuum is filled. So in the very early church, in the book of Acts, we see people selling property and bringing it to the feet of the apostles to be distributed for people who didn't have any money and didn't have any food. In fact, the very first deacons, the very first officers of the church in Acts 6 were ordained because certain widows were being neglected in the daily distribution. There was a daily distribution to widows who couldn't work. They gave them food and gave them things. Well, at some point in the church's history, that was declined. That didn't happen. And so what happened? We have a welfare system that the government puts into place. We have other organizations, what we would call parachurch organizations, doing the work of the church. Well, the same thing happened in prison ministry. Many Christians in our country, especially conservative Christians, are middle to upper class, white, Republican-leaning peoples. And as we said earlier, the Republican mantra for 20 years was tough on crime, lock them up and throw away the key. We are not, there's too much criminal activity. We need to get rid of the criminals. We need to do something about the criminals. And so 3 strikes, you're out. All those things. Well, the same thing happened. The church didn't separate itself from the politics. When our politics clash with our Christian faith is supposed to have the upper hand and push down that area in which we disagree with a politic, or we develop a politic that goes alongside our Christian faith. And so the church carried that mantra, let's be tough on crime, without realizing that justice and mercy meet at the cross. You can't have one without the other. There's always mercy involved. And the church relegated that authority. And so Charles Colson started Prison Fellowship. And in fact, one of my closest friends and a mentor of mine told me he was in the church for 30 years. And the only time he ever heard about prison ministry was when that's what Charles Colson does. It was never, hey, why don't you go do prison ministry? It was, hey, Prison Fellowship's there to do prison ministry.
Well, there are 2 issues here, Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Industries. One is what Christians should be doing now, and you're suggesting that they should through their churches and as church members, as churchmen, let's say, they should be involved in prison ministries. That is bringing prisoners into Christianity so that they have a reason to live, a reason to hope, and maybe a better work ethic than they had going in. And that when they're freed, they come into that church family and have support and aid for their prosperity afterwards. But now the other part is Christianity, looking back into the 1990s, what should Christianity have said, and what should Christianity and Christian people have done at that time when the rush was for building more prisons and issuing prison bonds and toughening criminal statutes? What should have been the argument at that time of people who believe in the gospel?
It probably should have been similar to what the conversation we're having now is. There's actual real conversation about reducing certain sentences, changing targeted sentencing so that particular populations aren't continually disenfranchised. They should have been involved in the prisons. Imagine 20 years ago if a vast army of Christians were going in with the gospel, that life-changing message, and were actually investing themselves then in those lives. How much would the recidivism rate have been dramatically reduced then? If people had been involved even in the 80s as much as they're starting to get involved now, we would have never had to build those prisons.
So you're saying not that Christians should have been involved in the politics of legislation, but you're saying at that time when the prison industrial complex was gaining speed, Christians should have been in prisons, and that work would have slowed or delayed the rise of this monster.
That's correct. Keeping in mind that once you're in the system as a prisoner, it is a very dangerous, difficult system. It's an ungodly system. Keep that in mind. The system we're talking about is, even though Christians work within it, it is an ungodly system.
Why is it ungodly?
Because it wasn't, number one, it wasn't God's intention that there should be prisons. He didn't say that's the best way to do government in safety. But the second thing is because it treats a person as a number and not as a human being.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Mark Casson. Mark Casson, how can my listener find out more about you and maybe offer a way of support for Metanoia Prison Ministries?
They could visit our website if they Google Metanoia.
Spell that.
METANOIA. They could also email me at mcasson, CASSON, at pcanet.org, or they could call me on my phone at 559-681-7855. 5858.
Well, this is David Tulis and Mark Casson of Metanoia Prison Ministries. Thanks for joining us. Mark was for 15 and a half years in prison in California. And in leaving, he has been working to bring the ideas of the gospel. You might say the ideals of local economy and the free market and service to the other into prisons around the country. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
There's been great reformation work going on at Walker State Prison in Rock Spring, Georgia, not far from Chattanooga. Recidivism rates of men who go there are down almost to nothing. Fisticuffs, sodomies and things like that taking place in that prison are also down virtually to nothing. And that is because of the great role of religious conviction, religious ideas, the promise of God in the heart of men at that prison. So this is something that we need to consider as a boon to the future. And let's see about maybe restoration and not punishment. This is David Tulis.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former U.S. ambassador to Russia and special assistant to President Obama, Mr. Michael McFaul. He'll be here to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Putin's aspirations for Russia. Don't miss Ambassador Michael McFaul this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on WSDT AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services.
Here you
The
are,
sky
working to
is
keep
our
your
limit.
customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.